It will just start. No, yes, live stream has started. So we're now going to the formal meeting of this meeting of Subcommittee A of the Licensing and Public Protection Committee. I'm Councillor Philip Davis, and I'll be chairing the hearing of Subcommittee A today. Before we start, could you all please mute your microphones for the moment, which will improve the sound. So you'll have to talk about the procedure. And if you could all turn your cameras off, with the exception of committee members will generally have their cameras switched on for the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please make sure their mobile phones are on silent, ensure you're in a room.
Councillor Davis, you're fading in and out for me. Is anyone else having problems hearing?
Yes.
Okay, that's a shame.
Yes.
Well, again, could everybody turn their cameras off?
Chair, quite a few people don't have their microphones muted either, which I know does interfere with bandwidth.
And if they could mute their microphones, still getting some feedback. Oh, that's better. Okay. Okay. And then if Councillor Ward, if you want to put your camera back on, we'll see if that works. Then I'll check that everybody can hear. Okay. Councillor Clements, are you able to hear me okay now?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Davis. I had to just unmute there, but yes, I'm hearing you clearly now. Thank you.
Okay. That's then we'll proceed on the basis that obviously when people speak, they can turn their camera and audio on if they wish. But anyway, thank you very much for that. Okay, so it's very important, as we've just established, that everybody's able to hear me and the subcommittee, and we're able to hear you. If we have any substantial disruptions to that, we may need to suspend the meeting temporarily or to another time and date under the regulations for these types of meetings. But that really happens, I'm glad to say. I can also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website so that the general public can view it. The formal agenda is as follows. 1. Notice of recording webcast. I advise the meeting to note this meeting will be webcast for live or subsequent broadcast by the Council's meeting YouTube site, and that members of the press and public may record and take photographs, except where there are confidential or exempt items. 2. Declaration of interest. Members are reminded they must declare all relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies and notification from nominee members. Apologies were submitted on behalf of Councillor Martin Straker-Weld, and Councillor Mike Ward was nominated substitute. Minutes, I confirm and sign the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of January 2022. That's the formal items. So can I welcome you all to this hearing for an application in respect to the licence for Maryvale Convenience Store, 1 Franklin Road, Birmingham, B30 2HJ. As I said, I'm Councillor Philip Davis and I'm chairing the meeting today. With me are the 2 other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Michael Ward and Councillor Bob Beecham. Also present in this meeting are the following officers: the licensing officer, Mr. Shahid Yasser, the committee manager, Ms. Katie Townsend, and the committee lawyer, Ms. Joanna Swan. Now, I'm moving on to the parties. Can I ask Mr. Naja Rajesh, the agent for Mr. Pirathapan, the applicant, to identify himself, please?
Thank you, Councillor. My name is Rajesh. I'm a licensing agent.
Okay, thank you. And is Mr. Pirathapan with you?
Yes, he's here.
Okay, fine. So, as I said, you can bring him in as you feel appropriate, but we will normally come to you for any matters on the application. Now, those making representations, we have a list of those wishing to make representations. So I know Councillor Clements is here. Councillor Clements, are you here receiving us loud and clear, as they say?
Yes, thank you. I'm happy to confirm that again. I can hear you very clearly at the moment, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for my broadband, but thank you.
Okay. Councillor Grindrod?
I'm here as well, Councillor Davis, thank you.
Okay. I'm likely to come to you first, Councillor Grindrod, for your representation, for the representations. Then I'll go down the list. Then I'll come to Councillor Clements and then the others. Now, the list of those attending, is Mr. Mallon here? Mr. Mallon? We've received written representations. You don't have to attend. We read all our representations. So it looks like Mr. Mallon. I don't think so. Miss Tracy Seeley.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Alexandra Kowalski.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Ms. Amanda Chan. Ms. Amanda Chan, are you here? I'll put that as a no. Ms. Ann Chivers. Ann Chivers? No.
Yes, yes, I've had to
Oh, you
unmute
are here,
myself.
sorry.
I'm here by
Okay.
phone.
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for confirming. That's one of the questions. We can hear you, which is good. And then I've got Kamaljit Sharma. Kamaljit Sharma? Apparently not. Mr. Joe Parker. Mr. Parker? No.
Councillor Davis, that I think that Joe Parker has put a comment in the chat, and which reads, "I'm on a work call at the same time, but will join as I can." If you look in the chat, okay. One of the officers could look in the chat, perhaps.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes, I'll. They do notify me the chat. So thanks. That's helpful. And Shane Bickerton is next on my list. Is Shane Bickerton here?
Good morning. I am. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. And then I've got Marion Mound. Marion Mound here?
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And then Richard Wilkes.
Hello.
Okay. Thank you for that. And Nigel Dawkins. I saw Mr. Dawkins' picture of it. Mr. Dawkins? Are you hearing us okay? Don't think there's any. I'm not getting any response there. Okay. Anyway, Mr. Dawkins. Oh yes. Okay, I can see you now. Okay, you're on mute, but that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. So we've established who's here, and that one person will try and join us. Okay. Thank you for that. Now we've received a number of representations. So can I ask if any person making representations wishes to withdraw their representations at this stage of the hearing? No need to all answer individually. I just need anybody who wants to do that to signify, put their camera on and speak. If I don't get that, I'll assume all the representations stand.
Chair, I think Amanda Chan may have joined from reading.
Oh,
yes, that's correct. I am here. Sorry for joining late.
Okay, that's fine. We're just at representations and whether anybody wants to withdraw them. And the silence I'm getting suggests not. Okay, I'll assume those all stand. Okay, thank you. So I assume all parties have read and understood the licensing committee's procedural rules sent out with a notice for today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online. But I want to assure everyone that any amendments won't impact on the party's right to fair hearing. Now, we will use the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate, chiefly communications by audio and your cameras. But what I'm going to ask you to do now is to go into chat. Don't worry if you can't do this on the phone. And I've had confirmation from the one person who's phoned in. But generally, it's useful for us to have, for the office to have a list of attendees in the chat. And so what we're going to do is go into chat and just put our names. So if you would all do that, I'm going to do that as well. and that just assists the officers in terms of their recording of the meeting. So I'm going to type in Councillor P. Davis in the chair. So if you could all put your names in, as I say, that will assist the process today. Okay. Okay, thank you for that. Right. So if you could keep the chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting, that will assist in terms of any messages around communication particularly. One person's dialed in on audio telephone, so we'll also make allowances for that. Can I just check, are you still able to hear us, the person on audio?
Yes,
okay.
yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Can you give me your name again? Because I've got a whole list of people I've forgotten.
It's Anne Chivers.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Chivers. Okay, you're obviously connected, which is the important thing. As we said earlier, with the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you're the person speaking. And if there are any problems with bandwidth, I may ask everyone to turn their cameras off, including committee members. But obviously, we've been through that earlier, and keeping the cameras off and the audio muted unless speaking seems to have helped. Now, does anybody want to make any? Now, these are usually about procedural matters rather than the substance of the objection or the case for the application. So I'll go firstly to the applicant's representative, Mr. Nagar Rajesh. Do you want to make any procedural points, any preliminary points, Mr. Rajesh?
No, Councillor, not at this stage. No.
Okay, thank you. And do any of the persons objecting wish to make any procedural points? Just indicate, just come in on audio and put your camera on if you do. Again, I'm not getting anything. We're all connected, so I'm taking that as a no. So thank you. Okay, the procedure is as follows. Firstly, the licensing officer, Mr. Yasser, will present the report. Then the applicant's representative, Mr. Rajesh, will be asked to present their case. And again, we're asking if case presentation can be kept to approximately 20 minutes. Now, next, those making representations will be invited to make their case. Now, you have 20 minutes each to make that case. What I'm asking you to do is, you know, if there are matters you agree with from a previous speaker, please just say that. There's no need to repeat the same information to us, because you can say, well, I agree with what X said. And any new comments you want to make, of course, are particularly welcome. And then I'll go down the list of those who want to make presentations. And again, if at any time it's somebody else's turn to speak, please mute the microphone and turn off your camera to assist with the bandwidth. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage. We'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, you can signify by turning on the wish to speak hand, which I think we're all familiar with, but also you could use the chat if there's any difficulty in catching my attention, and the officers will alert me. If at any point you can't hear or having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. I'll then ask the person speaking to repeat what they've said, or obviously we'll pause the meeting to make sure we can address any bandwidth and connection problems. So again, muting your microphone, keeping your camera off until requested to do otherwise is important to keeping the meeting going. Legal advice. Occasionally, it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice. At my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in the meeting while members and the relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting with Microsoft Teams. We'll then return to this meeting and continue. If there are any problems with the live stream being broadcast on the City Council's website, I'll ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and to stop speaking until live stream is restored. If at any time the meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I'll then ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the close of the hearing, I'll invite all parties to make a brief closing submission. That's not new material, that is really summarising briefly what you've said. And again, you're free to say, well, I agree with X and what he or she said. No decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, members and the relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They'll go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that members need to clarify any point, you'll be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision, and the decision will be notified within 5 working days of this meeting today. So that's the process. And so with that, I'd like to now move to the Licensing Officer, Mr. Shahid Yasser, to present his report, please. Mr. Yasser.
Thank you, Chair. Nakidram Parithian applied on the 20th of January 2022 for the grant of a premises license for Maryvale Convenience Store, 1 Franklin Road, Birmingham, B30 2HJ. Councillors, the purpose of the report before you today is to consider representations that have been made by application for a premises licence which seeks to permit the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises to operate 24 hours, Monday to Sunday. The premises wish to remain open to the public 24 hours, Monday to Sunday. Representations have been received from other persons, and these are attached to appendices 1 to 65 of your report. Conditions have been agreed with West Midlands Police and the applicant, and these are attached to appendix 67. There's also some site location plans attached to appendix 68 of your report. Now, when carrying out its licensing function, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. The licensing authority is also required to take such steps as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. The options which are available to you today are to grant the licence in accordance with the application, to reject the application, to grant the licence subject to conditions modified to such an extent as you consider appropriate, exclude from the licence any of the licensable activities to which the application relates, or refuse to specify a person in the licence as the premises supervisor. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move to Mr. Rajesh, who's speaking for the applicant. Mr. Rajesh.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say that my client has several years of experience in licensed trade. He managed 24 hours licensed venues in the past. He's a personal license holder with an excellent track record. My client took over this business recently and renovate this premises from floor to ceiling. It's a very expensive project. He invested lots of money into this business. Chair, this is not a wine shop. It's a convenience store with a petrol station. If you look at the floor plan, Chair, it's a very small premises. It's about 6 by 3 square meters, the size of a living room of a standard house. Therefore, we can't have lots of product lines, and alcohol is going to be a very tiny part of the shop floor. The main reason my client is asking this license is because the premise is going to be open 24 hours as it's part of a petrol station. Due to the size of this shop, we can only have few lines of products. Therefore, we have to have all the facilities all the time to make this as a viable business. If I try to paint a picture, if it's not going to be like any off license in a local area. When you walk into the shop, you have lines of alcohol, different types of beers and wines. We're not going to be able to have any of these. It's a very small flow space. We're going to have groceries, and there's a coffee machine and so many other things. Alcohol going to be in a small space, and it's only going to be few varieties. That's it. So it's not like a standard off license or a very big convenience store. Chair, this premises neither in a special policy area, or this area is not been identified by a problem area by any responsible authorities. We have discussed this application with police, and this is supported by the police, trading standard, licensing authorities, and every single responsible authorities. I'm also kindly asking you to consider the measures we have already put in place in order to promote the licensing objectives. These are going to be our license conditions. I would like to point out some of these conditions, Chair. The main one is from 2300 hours, from 11 p.m. at night, the service will only take place through the night hajj. So we won't let anyone to walk into the premises. It gives us the full control over the sales of alcohol and any other products. So what we sell and to whom we sell, we have full control over it. And we're not going to sell single cans of beer, cider, or anything. There's no single cans, which will keep most of the troublemakers, if there is any troublemakers, away from this premises. This is one of the general practice my client followed in his previous businesses. Now he is willing to take this extra measure as a license condition. Therefore, he has to comply with it to give everybody an assurance. We have a full CCTV system, and we will maintain the recordings for minimum of 31 days, including night visions in and out. It's a complete system. And we have a strict challenge 25 policy in place. Our terminals, the EPOS terminals, the tills, they are set with some till prompt. So every alcohol or tobacco sales, the cashier will be prompt with a task. They have to complete the ID check. If they don't complete this, they cannot proceed with the sale. So this is something every staff has to follow in order to sell certain items. So these measures are in place. In addition to that, again, this is one of the practice my client used in his previous venues, like we maintain a problem people list. If there is any problem people, we will maintain a list and we will refuse the sale of alcohol, any alcohol, regardless of their conditions. So this is the running list, will be updated by management regularly, and we are more than happy to keep any input from any responsible authorities if there is any concerns about any individuals. Again, this will keep any problem makers away from the premises. Again, if there is any problem makers. It's one of the successful projects my client did in other boroughs and different venues, and it was highly regarded by police and other responsible authorities in the past. Chair, we can see there is a petition signed by lots of people. We can totally understand some of the concerns. However, I would like to say the following. While we respect the concerns raised by some of the residents, I would like to say that the petition was initiated and driven by our competitors. Some of the residents who signed the petitions are living miles away from the premises. My client had invested lots of money into this premises, Chair. The premises renovated by spending tens and thousands of pounds. He must do the business in the same neighborhood to the same residents, and therefore he'll never jeopardize his reputation and his business by selling alcohol irresponsibly. Because this is not the only trade he's going to do. He has a service station to run, he has a convenience store to run. The alcohol is going to be a tiny part of the whole business. So he will never jeopardize that after all of these investment, and this is his livelihood. The other thing is there is no evidence provided by they provided with these objections. Not a single direct evidence in relation to this application. No, the premises. This is not a special policy area. And moreover, we haven't received any objection from the police trading standards, child protections or licensing enforcement. With all due respect, the objections are purely based on assumptions and driven artificially by our competitors who is next door to us. Chair, the objections, most of the objections are mainly around crime and disorder. The responsible authority who has the expertise and the evidence to back these type of claims are the police. In this case, they are happy with the proposals. We are not going to introduce alcohol in this area. There are other venues already serving the alcohol. The difference we're going to make is that we will share the trade with other people. The people are not going to buy more alcohol or start to drink more alcohol because there is an additional shop on the street. So selling alcohol 24 hours is not a crime. The Act allows us to do that as long as we don't undermine the licensing objectives. So today, you don't have any evidence to say that my client will undermine the licensing objective. Rather, we have a number of measures put in place to promote the licensing objectives. After 11 p.m., all the sales are through the service hatch. We will never allow anyone into the shop. So we have full control over what we sell and to whom we sell. So this is going to cost lots of money to take these extra steps for my client, but he's a responsible licensee and he has done this in the past. And he will do it here too as a licensing condition. Chair, you know very well that the Licensing Act 2003 is a powerful tool. It has a clear mechanism to revoke or amend a premises license if it undermines any of the licensing objectives. So these powers, I mean, the responsible authorities can call for this, the residents can call for this. It can be called at any time. While you have all of these facilities under these legislations, it's totally unfair to refuse the application and destroy my client's livelihood purely based on assumptions without any direct evidence to back these objections. Finally, Chair, just to sum up what I said, you don't have any direct evidence linking to the premises in front of you to suggest that this proposal will undermine the licensing objectives. We have taken a number of measures in place, which none of the other premises have in this area. No other venues in this area has this type of restrictions, but we have accepted. And this premises is a very, very small scale. The alcohol is going to play a small part in it. We have no objection from police, children's services, trading standards, licensing authorities, and any other responsible authorities. There was a campaign carried out by our competitors purely on business purpose. So one thing I just want to make it very, very clear. If you have 24 hours alcohol license, it doesn't mean the alcohol will be or can be purchased by anyone at any time. It's fundamentally wrong. The alcohol will only become available to someone if we sell it to the person. So this is where the responsibility comes in. This is where my clients comes in. This is where our extra measures, extra conditions comes in. So my client is fully aware of his responsibilities. As a proof, we are giving listing all the conditions, the strict measures in place to promote the licensing objectives. And you don't have any evidence in front of you to say otherwise. All the objections are based on assumptions. Therefore, Chair, this application should be granted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. That's a very helpful, clear submission. Thank you for that. So, are there any questions from members? Councillor Ward?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Rajesh, you've made great play of the need for the applicant to sell alcohol at this location, but the business that your applicant has bought is a petrol station, is it not? How can it be that a petrol station that has been operated for some years and is still a viable business? I can picture the business. I think it's an MOT testing station as well, not just a petrol station. How can it be that it is so vital to this man's business that he's just purchased that he should be able to or should have to sell anything really, but specifically alcohol?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether you have seen the premises recently. There is lots of investment went into the premises, and I can't answer on the business, the revenue side of it. But when my client approached me for this application, the case he put forward, because the investment and the current situations and the current climate, in order to be a viable business, he has to have all the facilities. Otherwise, he's not going to return. And you might see there are lots of extra measures taken to this premises: new CCTV system, extra staffing, extra facilities. So there are lots of improvement from previous management. So that is associated with lots of costs. So there's some business expansion is needed. That's the main reason, Chair.
Further question, Mr. Rajesh. You'll be aware, if you visited the premises, that they are opposite residential properties. Now, those premises, those properties opposite, are used to having a business opposite them that operates during the daytime. I would be very surprised if any activities at a petrol station and MOT testing station took place outside of the hours of something like 8 in the morning and maybe 6 o'clock in the evening. Do you not think that for those properties to suddenly become opposite a business that is operating every single minute of the day, do you not think that is a valid ground for objection?
Again, Chair, yes, I can understand the concerns the resident raise and the same concerns you are raising. What we are trying to say is it's not, even though it's 24 hours business, it's not completely open and it's not regulated business. So if you compare to other venues and other 24 hours, we have lots of measures in place to restrict everything. Not going to allow people inside the premises after certain hours, and the limits. It's a limited amount of products. So we don't believe, and we have done this in the past. My client had 24 hours venues in the past, and having a 24 hours venue in a residence area, it's not something that's never been happened before. As long as it's managed properly without undermining licensing objectives, it's possible. It can be done, and we have done it in the past. So we have the confidence, we have right measures in place to run the business without undermining any of the licensing objectives. And if I can add one more thing to that, Chair, Councillor, we have, as I mentioned in my statement, we have the number of restrictions on our license. If you get this 24 hours, there's a number of restrictions on our license. Everything can be enforced easily, separately. And if anything goes wrong, everybody has the opportunity to call this license back to the committee. It can be reviewed. So there's safety net is there. So that's the assurance we are trying to give today.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh. One final question. You and I will both be aware that the planning regime and the licensing regime are two separate matters, though both obviously administered by the local authority. Can I ask you, does your client even have planning permission for a shop?
Yes, he has.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Councillor Beecham, have you got any questions?
Yes, please, Chairman, if I may, just clarification on several things. How do you, well, it's a proposal of how you staff this business particularly during the evenings after 11 o'clock. How many DPSs have you got and how many trained staff have you got as far as the premises are concerned?
Thank you, Councillor. At the moment, we have 4 staff. All 4 of them are personal license holders. Of course, one of them can be a DPS. After this sort of conversations we had with police before we lodged the application, we have accepted a condition says there have to be a regular risk assessments need to be carried out. So that's something we need to do regularly. This is the reason we have closing the doors at 11 o'clock. So no customers can come into the premises. Everything is through the hatch service. So we have staff in rotation. We have fully qualified force member of staff at the moment. Depending on this, we might change the numbers in the future.
Do you have anything in the way of locating or getting hold of the police should there be a problem?
Yes.
Specifically?
Yes. Yes, they have the direct details of the DPS, and one of the conditions we have already agreed is police or any responsible authorities can contact a designated premises supervisor at any time.
Thank you. What are your safe storage parts that you need to do to ensure that the desirable stores don't disappear?
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't get you.
Well, I'm trying to find out if you were, if you had people coming into the shop and taking away desirable stores, as the army call it, insofar as expensive liquor and the like. Have you got somewhere safe to store these things and not have them on show to a large degree?
Yes, two points regarding that, Councillor. One, the spirits, the expensive ones, is always behind the counter. It's not directly exposed to the customers, and we are not letting anybody in after 11 o'clock till morning. And in terms of storing on the premises, this is a very, very tiny premises, Chair. There is not big storage facilities. The products are going to be handful of them. So again, we are not expecting big sales in these premises. This is one of the reasons we're trying to get all the facilities. We have competitors nearby. They sell a lot more varieties of alcohol than what we do. So again, we're not going to have very expensive alcohols in high numbers. It's going to be handful, and we don't have space to fit in. So,
do you expect to have deliveries of alcohol, or you do the collections within the staff that are on site?
Yes, it's by the staff. We don't have any space to do big deliveries or receive big deliveries. It's a very small shop, yeah.
You made us aware that you think that competitors are the ones that are getting behind the refusal side of things. What competitors? Again,
I'm not saying all the objections. There are a big chunk of residents. They have a genuine concerns. I can see that. I can feel that. I'm not writing off all the objections, but again, this is hearsay. It was a really shock to us when we received all these petition, but we've been approached by some of the residents, and we've been informed. Again, Chair, Councillor, it's a hearsay. I'm just saying what I heard. It's our competitors was collecting signatures at the their premises, asking people to sign the petition when they come in to buy the products, and we've been told some of the residents that because they are they have to be friendly, therefore they signed it. But it's, again, I don't have any evidence to prove that. But there was some incidents. Our competitors were removing the notices, and there was some issues by the competitors already. So that's why we strongly believe that part of this, at least small part of these objections, are driven by the competitors. But I'm not denying the concerns raised by other residents.
Thank you. Do you have a refusals log system?
All of these are our basic practice, Councillor. The conditions I listed during my case earlier is just handful of few of the conditions. We have refusal logs, we have ID checks, automatic ID checks on the tills. We have 24-hour CCTV system. We don't even, I just mentioned we don't sell single cans of beer, but we don't even sell, if someone come and buy an alcohol with the plastic cups, we will refuse it straight away. This is kind of a general practice my client did in all other venues he managed in the past. So this is why we have confidence we can do this.
Are there any windows to this premise, like shop windows?
I don't believe there is anything we can open windows. I haven't seen once it's fully renovated, but I can ask my client, he's here, to answer that.
Yes, okay. Just to see if there is alcohol on display to the outside world, really, is why I'm asking that. Other than listing it.
Observable then from the street, the alcohol.
Yes, yes.
Can I ask my client to answer?
Please.
Please do, yes.
But even if you can answer it. Good.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, could you repeat that question, please?
It's basically, is the alcohol, where you intend to put the alcohol, will it be observable from the street, like through a shop window?
It'll be it's a bit far away from the shop window, mostly behind the counter.
Okay. Okay. I think that answers the point. Yes, thank you for that.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for the moment.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for those questions, colleague. Right, we now move to those wishing to make representations from the community and the councillor colleagues. So I've got Councillor Grindrod first. Councillor Clements, you've got your hand up, but I'll be coming to you second. So the procedure here is that we respond to the comments of the applicant in that order. So you'll have a chance, obviously, to say you make your point in that context. So, Councillor Fred Grindrod.
Good morning, Councillor Davis, and good morning, colleagues. And yeah, no, just my appearance before you be relatively brief and succinct, I hope, and also my apologies that I may have to leave the meeting early because I have another commitment as well. Colleagues, I just want, appearing today to reiterate really my written objection to this application, and actually perhaps to make a note on my additional concern, having heard some of the comments made in the applicant's presentation. So just to reiterate what my kind of key concerns are firstly, under the concern of around the prevention of crime and disorder. Colleagues will be aware that the location is in close proximity to Cottridge Park. And I know that a number of residents have expressed a concern around antisocial behaviour in Cottridge Park. We have had issues there, and the idea of a 24-hour licence being granted to somewhere so in such a close proximity, and again, given some of the statements made, a real concern about how that will be managed about the sale of alcohol, that could well end up causing additional antisocial behaviour in the Cottridge Park area, particularly late at night and into the early morning. We have had some issues in Cottridge Park where residents, the police and the local community have come together to really work to ensure that Cottridge Park is a safe and welcoming place. And my fear is that this readily available of alcohol at all times would cause detriment to that. I also want to make the main point, really, the prevention of public nuisance. The location is a heavily populated residential area, and there are close neighbours to these premises. And I think, as Councillor Ward made in the point Councillor Ward made in his question to the applicant, was the residents are used to having a business that is operating a quiet business that is operating within the daylight hours, indeed probably within the hours of 8 till 6, to then suddenly transform that to a 24-hour application would be cause considerable change to their quality of life, including increased traffic and disruption at all times, particularly noise, antisocial behaviour and other things around the area, even if the mitigations that the applicant has set out are acted on. I feel that these will be very minimal in comparison to what potentially may happen in the area. There's already a well-regarded newsagent, Maryvale News, in close proximity to this premises, which has a limited hours licence, and I see no need for additional licences in the immediate vicinity. And I'm concerned that also that this open licence aspect will cause the community, this particular area, to be associated with easy to access alcohol, which again will increase potential nuisance, disruption and disturbance for residents. And whilst this premises, whilst I recognise that this cannot be held in the policy, sorry, let me start again. This premises is almost immediately adjacent to the Bonville Village Trust area, which has an alcohol sale ban for over 120 years. Whilst I recognise that this policy cannot be applied directly to the premises, I do feel sensitivity around this should be applied to the awarding of any alcohol licence in this area. To have a 24-hour licence immediately one step beyond seems to me not in keeping with the wishes of the community in that area. And then I'd also like to take challenge with that issue that the applicant made around the petitions and the opposition being something that's been driven by potential competitors. I would like to really reassure the committee that that is absolutely not the case. The concerns that have been expressed to myself and Councillor Clements, as evidenced by the petition that Councillor Clements took to the full council meeting recently, and also to the significant numbers of letters that I have had personally, and indeed the objections that have been sent through to this committee, really indicate this is a strong community feeling and community concern around this 24-hour licence, should one be granted. Residents have written to me, residents have phoned to me about their significant concern about the impact this will have on their daily lives, and particularly on their evenings and nights, with the residents most immediately affected, those on Franklin Road and round in Maryvale Road, being really concerned and worried about the disruption this will cause to them at night time. There is a strong view that this application, and I agree that this application is not suitable and not in keeping with the local area, and will have significant detrimental impact on the lives of local residents for these reasons. I'm aware of the number of petitions. I'm aware of a number of other comments. I support those comments. I also support the comments that my ward colleague Councillor Clements will make shortly. So therefore, I do ask the committee to not grant this application, and as I believe it to be not in keeping with the area and of detriment to our community. Those are my comments, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Windrod. That's very clear. Thank you. So I'll now move on to Councillor Clements. Councillor Clements. I'll take our colleagues to the two councillors after, actually, just to clarify. Councillor Clements.
Yes, thanks very much, Councillor Davis, and hello, Councillor Ward and Councillor Beecham, and hello to everybody else, the residents, the applicant and his agent. Bearing in mind your comments, Councillor Davis, I won't repeat a lot of what Fred has said, but I've set out also in my written comments my strong objection to this application. I think the number of residents who've taken the trouble to send in objections individually to the licensing committee is a strong indication of the strength of feeling. And as I was the person who submitted the petition collected by Mr. Kamaljit Sharma, I think it's important for the committee members to understand that Mr. Sharma is a local resident who lives above the shop, his children attend local schools. He is a member of the community, and he's always managed that shop with a great sensitivity towards the concerns of his neighbours and the wider community. And he has a strong sense of the character of the local area. Because although I think we had very articulate and very professional presentation from Mr. Rajesh as the applicant's agent, I think it felt entirely generic. I didn't have any sense that this was an application with a sense of this location on the corner of Merivale Road and Franklin Road, which I pass by virtually every day on my way to the station or my way to go about my business. And I think that the fact that you've got these set of very generic precautions and measures, again, shows a limited awareness of the site. And I put into the chat just a comment that on this location there are two businesses, as far as I understand it, and I'm happy to be corrected if this is not the case. But there's ASG Motors, which is a motor repair and MOT business, and there is also the petrol station that has operated thus far as an automated and unstaffed petrol station, with a reception premises where I think a few sweets and things are sold. So I think in the local area, to hear that we were going to get a 24-hour convenience store was a great surprise, particularly as Merivale News, the other premises, is literally a stone's throw away from this location. And if we think about turning to the licensing objectives, and particularly public safety and public nuisance, as council members, other councillors will know, I'm a traffic campaigner and I am engaged in a long-term project to look at a low traffic approach across Brundle and Cotteridge. So I'm very, very concerned about the total absence of the consideration of the public nuisance, and the public safety risks that will be posed to the community by the amount of traffic that a 24-hour premises would generate in this area. This is a quiet residential area, and residents are entitled to enjoy their quiet life with their families and going about their business in the local area. And there are a number of premises, in addition to Merivale News, around that sell alcohol. Most of them have limited hours. So I really would ask the committee members to consider what sort of clientele is it that a 24-hour premises with a hatch operating from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, who would be attracted to go and buy alcohol there? And I would really suggest that it's people who are desperate to consume, who possibly have issues with alcohol addiction. So I think that there's a range of entirely legitimate reasons why all of us in the local community are very concerned about the impact, the negative impact on quality of life in the local area. And I really do think that the implication, or in fact the allegations made that the petition in particular that was submitted by myself on behalf of those 550 residents is entirely about competition issues. I think that's slightly below the belt and really rather inappropriate, because I think that it's entirely legitimate for a neighbouring business to raise issues of unfair competition, but also please remember that the person who coordinated that petition is a local resident who is entirely entitled to raise issues about the impact of this new business on the quality of life of the local area. Also note that there is at least one other petition that's included in the submissions, that is further into the appendices. And I think it's also useful for the committee members to look at Appendix 33, where you can see the photos of the location. You can see what a small forecourt it is, and the junction where there are double yellow lines, and a terrible problem with parking. And selfish behaviour by drivers, which makes it difficult for people to cross the road at that junction. So for a whole range of issues, I think this is an application that I would urge the committee not to approve. And if you do feel that the permissive quality of the licensing legislation is such that you have to approve the application, I really urge you to reduce the opening hours. There is absolutely no need or demand for the 24-hour sale of alcohol in this location. And again, from Mr. Rajesh's very comprehensive presentations, he said several times that the shop floor is tiny. It's a tiny premises. Alcohol will be a tiny part of the shop. If that's the case, then clearly alcohol is not central to the business plan for the applicant and for running this as a viable business. It will antagonise the local community. So I really suggest in the that there are all sorts of reasons why alcohol isn't appropriate in the shop, and if it goes ahead. But if it does, then the hours should be drastically reduced. So thank you very much for listening to me. And I really think that you take account of the strong feeling from the community that's evidenced by both petitions, by the submissions by both councillors, the MP, and the number of individual residents who've taken so much trouble to submit individual objections. And if you've read them all, some of them are extremely detailed, and people have gone to the trouble of researching the legislation and the company history of the applicant. So thanks very much for listening to me. And I'd like to say thank you to all the residents who are here this morning to make their objections in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clements. And we do indeed have all the we have 56 appendices, which are letters and the petitions and so on. So we do look at those and we'll consult those when we make our decision. So questions, colleagues. Councillor Beecham, do you want to ask either or both Councillor Grindrod and Councillor Clements any questions?
Yes, please, Chairman, if I may. I'm concerned that there seems to be no news from the police side. Have they been in touch with the police and determined problems that there may be with the adjacent land? And was it anything to do with what's on the site as is?
Is that to Councillor Clements or Councillor Grindrod?
Both of them.
Okay. Councillor Grindrod, have you any comments on that?
Sorry, so, colleagues. So we're particularly concerned about and have discussed these issues with the local policing team in the round with regard to our concern about the amount of officers the local policing team have at the moment. But I'd let Councillor Clements perhaps give a more specific comment on that. But the concern we have is that there has been significant issues that we've had to deal with around Cottridge Park. But I personally haven't had a specific conversation on this particular item with the local police team, simply because I haven't been able to meet with them that regularly at the moment because of their inavailability. Okay,
Councillor Clements.
Thanks, Councillor Davis. If Councillor Beecham's question is, have we had a specific conversation with the police about this? The answer to that is no, and I think it's very clear from the Mr. Ragis's presentation that the police, haven't, as a responsible authority, haven't raised an objection. But I think we do have, but they do have an ongoing concern, as we do as local councillors, about public safety in Cottridge Park. As I wrote in my objection, this is a park where the local community has come together and formed a Friends of Cottridge Park group and invested a lot of time and energy in improving the environment in the park and making it a truly welcoming and inclusive environment for all our residents. And I know that the police are concerned about the increase of incidents of antisocial behaviour, and in fact a couple of violent incidents in Cottridge Park. And we know that really the context of a lot of those is alcohol use and drug consumption. So I think there's legitimate reasons to be concerned that the availability on a 24-hour basis of alcohol adjacent to the park will have a negative impact on behaviour in this very popular and well-used local park, which is particularly during the lockdowns was a real haven for the local community. So I think that's why we have a particular concern. And if you spoke to the chairperson of Friends of Cottridge Park, she would reiterate that most strongly, as would most of her volunteers.
Thank you,
Thank you for that. Okay, thank you. Councillor Ward, have you got any questions for our councillor colleagues?
No, thank you, Chair. I have no questions for either of the councillors.
Okay, thank you. So is Mr. Mallon there, please, because you're next to make your representations. Mr. Mallon? Let me just check my original list.
Chair, I don't think he's
Mr. Mallon. No, that's right. That's correct. We were it was indicated he may not be able to come. Okay, so Ms. Seeley, Tracy Seeley, would you like to comment? And as I've said, I mean, if you're in agreement with the previous comments, you're certainly at liberty to say I agree with those. But please add whatever you wish.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I'd just like to say that Councillor Clements put our points across very eloquently then, and I agree wholeheartedly with what she said. I'd also like to add that there's going to be a new block of flats built opposite the junction as well, which will increase traffic to that neighbourhood as well, very, very soon. And that I believe Cottridge Park is actually in around that area is a no alcohol zone anyway. So for that reason, I think it should be objected to. And certainly we do not need a 24-hour alcohol licence granted for that area. There are so many other shops and availability to alcohol in that area. We don't need any more. And if, like the agent said, it's a handful of items that's going to be offered in that shop, why is it so detrimental to the business if he doesn't sell it? Does it really need to be sold?
Is that what you'd like to say?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I should add that people get a chance at the end to sum up for about 5 minutes. Colleagues, what I suggest, given the number of people who want to comment, I'm talking to my councillor colleagues, obviously Councillor Ward and Councillor Beecham. Would you be happy to indicate when you want to ask a question, and I'll bring you in then on the because we can then receive the representations. Then, if you indicate to me you want to by signifying with a hand or audio, I can bring you in to ask that. Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So on that basis, I'm moving to Ms. Alexandra Kowalski. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk. So first of all, I'm a resident in Beaumont Road, very close to Franklin Road. I have not signed the petition, and I find it quite upsetting to hear from Mr. Rajesh that only those who wanted to, in a way, support the other person who has the convenience store are those who submitted the objections, which is really not true. I haven't signed the petition, but I'm really deeply opposed to the application. So we have to think about all other people like myself who actually have very sincere objections to raise. So let me just start from a few things that Mr. Rajesh has raised, because I'm not going to go back to what I have already said in my objections. So first of all, he's proposing a set of mitigating circumstances, actions which will then mitigate the actions. So he's saying there will be a hatch. He's saying that this is a small premise, so they won't be selling too much alcohol. There won't be no single cans. There will be CCTV, and also alcohol, which is not very expensive, will be sold. And I'm a lawyer, actually professor of law, and I have to say that all this is an evidence for me that there will be no mitigation. Alcohol still will be sold and will be consumed. So these mitigating measures that the lawyer is proposing are not addressing any of those issues. Moreover, Councillor Clements made that statement. So if you're selling an alcohol, which is unfortunately not very expensive, that will attract a certain type of clientele. So we're definitely going to have a problem. Mr. Rajesh also says that there is no evidence to support the claim that there would be an issue if the alcohol is being sold. That's not true. During COVID, we have experienced the gatherings of young people who had access to alcohol and who actually were congregating in Maryvale, around Maryvale Road and in Cottridge Park. So we actually do have evidence what would happen if the premises are closed and the people will be able to buy alcohol in shops and then consume it in the late hours. So I think there is evidence. Also, what is interesting is that Mr. Rajesh is saying that that there is no evidence, but then he accepts the hearsay evidence about those who are signing the petition. So I think there is inconsistency in what he's saying. And also what I want to raise is that this is not, we have not submitted objections only on the basis of objections that this would in a way lead to public disorder. Most of us have raised the objections on the basis of nuisance, which is really, I think, a sensible ground to raise the objections, because this is a residential area, and as Liz Clements said, there is already an issue with illegal parking, there is already an issue with air pollution, there is already access in Sturchley to alcohol, so I really don't see how the mitigating circumstances and then the points that have been raised by Mr. Rajesh are addressing this. So I'm really deeply against this, and I really don't like to hear that we have raised our objections only because we're supporting the competitor. I actually never go to that shop in Maryvale Road. So my objections have not been in support of another convenience store, because I have deep objections to this. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk today. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And again, colleagues, if you want to ask a question, just indicate. But I will otherwise move on to Caroline Hammond. Ms. Hammond? I think we established you were. Yes?
I pressed the hand, Chairman.
Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Beecham.
I'm intrigued to get clarity on, well, both assumptions that there will be all the problems that are led to and they have evidence of, and yet we've seen no evidence from either the police or the other people that this is such a volatile area that might do that sort of thing.
I'm not saying it's a volatile area. What I have been saying is that during COVID, when young people, and I'm talking about young people who are over 18, so who are allowed to drink, when they didn't have access to Sturtley where the drink is available, they have been congregating in parks and around Cadbury Park, in Ladywood Park especially. I'm afraid at the time the police have not been really patrolling, but those of us who walk around it and live around it have witnessed large congregation of young people have been sitting in the parks and consuming alcohol and actually causing a lot of noise. So I think that kind of constitutes sufficient evidence that access to alcohol could lead to congregation of, predominantly young people. So I think the fact that police didn't really patrol the area, and I'm afraid to say that I never really saw the police ever in our area. So I think that doesn't really constitute an evidence that nothing is happening in the area. It's a very quiet area, but there are still issues, as both councillors have been pointing out. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, is Miss Hammond there? Is Miss Hammond there? Mr. Parker, you've got your hand up. Is this relevant to Miss Hammond's participation? Because I can't take questions.
It was just a comment. If I'm able to make one, is that not possible?
We can't take comments across other people's. Only the members are allowed to ask questions. You'll be obviously. I'll come to you in due course, and you can speak to.
Well,
I
need to leave now. I've just posted my comments, so please take them on board. I have a work meeting now.
Mr. Parker, I'll come to you. I'll come to you now if you want to comment, and that can be your submission.
That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I need to let's do that. Work. Well, it was just to say. I think having evidence is obviously difficult to collect before something actually takes place. I think it's common sense to just suggest that having a 24-hour premises that's selling alcohol is going to result in more people coming to the shop throughout the night to get alcohol. There's a large nightlife hub on the Pershore Road, which is very close to where the premises will be, and 11, 12 o'clock at night, people looking for more alcohol are generally going to go where they can get it most locally, and that's going to be at this shop, I feel. So to say that there's no evidence, I think it's common sense that that's going to happen. Also, the suggestion that it was local competition that was behind in any way the objections, I find it quite offensive to suggest that personally. Mr. Sharma's local community member, and I think he's done a fantastic job in highlighting this to the local community. There is parking issues. There's already a lot of traffic around that area. There's another garage at the other end of Beaumont Road, which I live on, and that's provides petrol, but it's also a store. It doesn't sell alcohol, but it already results in a lot of traffic coming through Beaumont Road. And having another garage at the other end, 24 hours, is only going to result in more traffic, and in an area there's a lot of children that are on the streets. It's a quiet residential area, so I have strong objections to the proposal for those reasons, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Palmer. Can I go back to Ms. Hammond? I have somebody listed just by a number, 44, then X is then 12. Is that Ms. Hammond?
I'm not sure if that's my number, actually. My name's Anne Chivers.
No, it's that must be you then. Okay, I don't think Ms. Hammond is here then, so I'll move. I've got Amanda Chan next. Amanda Chan.
Yes, hello, thank you. I would just like to say that I obviously every other point that everyone else has raised, I completely agree with. I'm a local resident. I live less than 2-minute walk from the premises, and everything people have said about antisocial behaviour is just really, really resonates with me. But there is just one other point that I'd like to make about safety. So I'm sure you all know that women's safety is something that is it's on everyone's minds at the minute. I want to be able to walk down my street, go for a jog around the local area, jog in Cotteridge Park without knowing that there's might be, drunk people hanging around at nighttime. It's already scary enough as a woman to just be walking around the streets existing. And if you add 24/7 unlimited alcohol on top of that, I just don't see how that's fair to me as a resident. So I just want you to all ask, if you care about women's safety, please don't make this a scarier place for women to exist in. We want to be free to walk the streets in the evening at nighttime. I often come home from work late at night and I have to walk past that premises. How's it going to make me feel if I know there could be drunk people gathering there late at night, potentially harassing me as I walk past? I should be able to walk in my own neighbourhood and feel safe. And then I'll just make one final point. Mr. Rajesh said that of an evening, there'll be a hatch. People will have to purchase alcohol through a hatch. That only protects the staff of that off license. It doesn't protect the local community members. If they're having to install a hatch late at night, clearly they have their own reservations about who's coming to purchase alcohol late at night, and they have to protect their own staff members. But what about the people who live in the area? I just think that I should be able to walk around my own area at nighttime, feeling safe, and know that there won't be drunk people congregating around, potentially harassing me. And I would just like to exist in my own neighbourhood safely. So thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I'll move on. Members will indicate if they have any questions. I've got Anne Chivers next. Then we have established that you're here, I think. Ms. Chivers.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. I'm joining by telephone because I can't get onto Microsoft Teams. Okay, thank you. So to reiterate what everybody else has said, I do agree with. However, what I'd like to say is, for those who don't live in the area or are not aware of these premises, the premises are leased by Mr. Singh, who is the freeholder. There are two separate premises there, the one of which is the garage and the other of which is the 4 unstaffed pumps that has an emergency number, which is a mobile number. So there is currently no shop there. There is no electricity to that shop, and it hasn't been installed. The pumps are unstaffed. There is 1 mobile number. There is now a large commercial fridge outside the premises. The wall, part of the wall has been destroyed by whatever. In terms of the evidence from Mr. Rajesh regarding his client, in terms of reputation, there has been media coverage of his client with other objections in other areas elsewhere. The company had a First Gazette strike-off on the 11th of January. The run date was put on the notice, which was just taped to the lampposts, which doesn't help some of my neighbours who have visual impairments. There is no parking at what is called a shop. It actually was the reception at one point. There is no parking there because the part that is leased by the garage, AEG garage, has cars, so there's no direct parking outside of the shop. There are houses, residential houses, on each side. So as you look at the building to the right and to the left, there are residential houses there. There is a local Tesco's, which obviously supplies petrol and other things. And as some of the committee may know, they too applied for a licence some years ago, and residents objected to it. Residents also objected to the Maryvale News having an alcohol licence, which was granted, but people objected to that too. The park is an alcohol restricted area. So in terms of evidence, as Mr. Rajesh suggested, I think there's kind of some key points within that of not having 24/7 and not having an alcohol licence to be given to the client. Thank you. Could you hear me?
You're on mute, Chair.
Sorry, thank you for that. And obviously, Mr. Rajesh is no doubt taking note of these points and will be able to make comment in the closing submission and answer some of those points, hopefully. Okay, I've got Kamaljit Sharma next, who is still on the list, I can see here. Could we go to Kamaljit Sharma? Certainly, I've got a Kamal Sharma showing on the list. Are you there?
Chair, I don't think he's in attendance.
Okay, all right, we'll move on. Thank you. I've got Shane Bickerton next. Shane Bickerton? No? In which case, I'll move to Marion Mound.
Hello.
It's
yes.
Marion Mound.
Oh,
hello.
Here.
Yes.
Hello.
What would you like to say?
Yes, I am a local resident. I live in Beaumont Road, which is off Franklin Road. I also work as a volunteer at Cotteridge Park. First of all, I'd like to say I buy a newspaper in Maryvale News every Saturday and Sunday morning, and I have been for several months, and I have never been asked to sign a petition against the granting of a 24-hour alcohol licence. So I think there is a somewhat of a slur against the owner of Maryvale News, saying that suggesting that people have been roped into signing the petition. That certainly has not been my experience. I totally support the comments of Fred Grindrod, Councillor Grindrod, and Councillor Liz Clements, and the comments of residents who live nearby. I'd like to say that I think that Mr. Rajesh misunderstands the difference between people making assumptions and a risk assessment. So a risk assessment means that people are taking into account the risks that are already there about antisocial behaviour, noise, pollution, noise nuisance in the area, because there is already evidence at Cotteridge Park of people causing a nuisance and under the influence of drugs and alcohol, as explained by Councillor Liz Clements, and also a violent incident. So the police have already been involved. I don't think that that's making assumptions. I think that the objections of councillors and local residents are based on what has happened already, what has already taken place. And I certainly think that there would be a greatly increased risk of noise pollution, noise nuisance, and risk of antisocial behaviour by people using and buying alcohol after 11 o'clock and until throughout the night, basically. And also I think that I would totally support the comments about risks to women's safety in particular. People do work shifts and some people will be walking home. The train station is nearby, there are buses nearby, and some people will be walking home at that time of night from work, men and women, and I think they should be entitled to walk home peacefully without being disturbed or distressed by people consuming alcohol in the area, which is currently a quiet residential area. So I'm totally opposed to the granting of a 24-hour alcohol licence at 1 Franklin Road. Just to add as well, I think it's very misleading for the applicant to want to call it the Maryvale Convenience Store when it's actually on Franklin Road, and Maryvale News is actually next door to it. And I think that's highly questionable name to be given to the premises. So yes, as I say, I'm totally opposed to the granting of a 24 alcohol licence. Thank you.
On mute.
I've now got Mr. Wilkes on the list, Mr. Richard Wilkes. And then it'll be Mr. Dawkins as the final one. Mr. Wilkes? Oh, yeah.
Hi. I noticed the agent brought up the word evidence. Now, I know this isn't a judicial hearing, but he did bring up the word evidence. For a start, Cottage Park and surrounding areas are subject to a public space protection order that has been in place for a number of years. There have been previous issues on Bourneville Green with people drinking there, which is why Tesco's will refuse their licence applications twice so far. He's made statements that he has got no evidence for. He stated they got planning permission for the premises to be used as a retail premises. That is incorrect. There has been no application for planning permission since 2002, and that was for erection of signs. There are 2 previous applications in the 1960s for the use of the premises as a garage and petrol forecourt. That is what it has permission for. Because it has those permissions, these premises are an excluded premises according to the legislation, because they've got petrol sales and they've got maintenance of motor vehicles. So a licence can't be issued to an excluded premises. In order to get a licence, he would have to get permission for that premises to become a retail premises, which is a full planning application. There has not been one submitted.
Can I just interrupt and say we don't deal with any of the planning matters here. It's an entirely separate process. So, if you want to give it as context, you can, but we won't be able to consider any planning issues.
Yeah, I realise that. I'm just raising the point that the agent has made statements which are factually incorrect. There are also issues with the application form that has been submitted. He has said they would not be selling alcohol 24 hours a day. Section 17 of the application form, they've listed their opening hours as 24 hours a day. The application form has been submitted as a personal application that has been ticked twice on that application form. It is not a personal application. It's an application in the name of the business, which is that business name is on the plans they've submitted as well, which is this F4P Limited. That's the business that is registered at that address. So there is issues with the application. The license, it's an excluded premises, and there are also issues with how it was advertised. A simple piece of A4 paper stuck on a post that has been wrecked by the weather does not promote the application properly.
Can I just say on that point, just for clarity, we follow a statutory procedure prescribed by the government. Even the notice has to be written in a certain way. So they're not matters within our control. We've simply followed that process. But anyway, what else do you want to say about this application?
The agent has made the statement that there's been improvements made, as in the applicant has spent money on premises. As far as I'm aware, the only improvements have been to the petrol forecourt, which is the replacement of the petrol pumps, installation of new signage and lighting, and CCTV. Therefore, the improvements are to the petrol retail business. There is no actual convenience store business there, and there never has been. So, if he's, I don't know what other improvements he's talking about. The business has been run as a petrol station for a number of years. The applicant has been running this as an unstaffed petrol station for at least a year. Therefore, considers that business to be all right. This is not a, by not issuing the license, we are not affecting his livelihood. He's also stated that as the designated premises supervisor, he will either be on the premises or contactable. He lives in Wales and he has at least 11 other businesses listed on Companies House around England and Wales. He's very unlikely to ever be on the premises. And how contactable can he be if he's somewhere else or at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning if there's an issue? Okay.
Okay, is that what you want to say, Mr. Wilkes? There is a chance of some. Okay, thank you very much for that. So finally, Mr. Dawkins. Mr. Dawkins. You're on mute, Mr. Dawkins. We're just getting some static there. No, we can't hear you. Are you able to hear me? You could nod. Okay. All right.
Chair, can Mr. Dawkins dial in on an audio telephone? Perhaps it might be a problem with Microsoft Teams, maybe.
Yes, it could be. If you... What's the telephone number?
Chair, the telephone number will be on the invitation that was sent to Mr. Dawkins.
Do you want to go to the invitation, Mr. Dawkins? We'll pause and then see if you can dial in. You'll obviously just need to find that on the Microsoft Teams invitation. So we'll pause briefly. Now the next bit of the procedure is in reverse order. I'll just wait for Mr. Dawkins to see if he can ring in. People are able to make a 5-minute summing up if they wish. You don't have to do that. And indeed, if you wish, obviously, I'm sure Councillor Clements and Councillor Grindrod will want to say something. Councillor Clements is still with us, certainly. I think Councillor Grindrod may have had to go to another appointment. You can let somebody else in that sense sum up if you've agreed with them, but it's up to you. Just see if Councillor Dawkins can ring in. Sorry, Mr. Dawkins. He was a councillor, I understand.
It's honorary alderman. Honorary Alderman Dawkins, isn't it? No, Nigel was a councillor for a number of years, but he hasn't been a councillor since 2012.
Thank you for that protocol correction. That's quite right. Quite right.
But like all of us, he is a local resident and he's extremely concerned about this. So I'm extremely grateful to him, like to all the other residents for taking time.
You'll get a chance to say something in your summing up. I think you're likely to be the last person speaking anyway, before the applicant. So that's the order. I have to go in reverse order. I just need to see any. Can I ask Katie Townsend any sign of
Councillor Dawkins?
Honorary Alderman Dawkins ringing in?
Chair, I've just been notified that he's joined the meeting.
Oh right, good. Okay.
Good morning,
Dawkins,
Chairman.
Are you there? Oh,
yes,
right,
I am,
good.
Chairman. Can you hear me?
We can indeed, yes. So that's
good. Thank you, Chairman.
I think all my colleagues.
Thank you. Let me make some quick points, if I may, please. First of all, in terms of petitions, although some aspersions have been cast on the other petition, by the applicant's representative. The petition that I submitted, which was for over 400, are all from local residents. So be assured on the strength of petitions. Most of the comments on my petition that was submitted reflect across the board the comments you've heard today, which I will not repeat. The thing that troubles me most, one thing that troubles me most, is that the nature of the business. For some reason, it doesn't seem to add up. It clearly isn't the functioning business. It clearly isn't a convenience store at the moment. And the applicant seems to be, in a sense, pitching out. Maybe he's trying to build up the value of the business by having a license. I don't know. But the fact that the business is not being run as a convenience store makes me strangely question what is going on there. It would be more reassuring if we saw a viable business working, which it isn't. Third thing, Chairman, if I may, is just talk about the alcohol restricted zone. Again, when I was a councillor many years ago, we did have a lot of antisocial behaviour in Cottridge Park, which is literally just down the road. We had a lot of effort, a lot of concentrated effort trying to reduce often alcohol-related antisocial behaviour. And in the end, we were one of the first parks to get the alcohol restricted area imposed in Cottridge Park. It's still there and it's still required as far as I'm concerned. Disappointing that the police weren't contacted. I believe if they had been contacted, rather than just listening to the licensing officer based in central Birmingham, I think they would have probably said a different story. I can only speculate, of course. It is disappointing, but undoubtedly there is activity down in that park. And ultimately, what we've always tried to do when we stopped the Tesco application many years ago is to protect the park from antisocial behaviour. Chairman, I think I probably said already. Someone has said 24 hours is just excessive and totally unreasonable, as opposed to just normal working hours, shop hours. Chairman, councillors, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Alderman Dawkins, for that. And could I just say, as a point of information, the police are always aware of applications. They choose not to comment, and we can only act on obviously objections.
Of course.
Okay, now the next procedure is, in fact, we're back to you, Alderman Dawkins. If you want to make a summing up, people don't have to sum up, but I'm offering this to anyone who's spoken. So do you want to say anything further?
Thank you, Chairman. Let me be very brief, of course. Again, just to reiterate, our petition was 400, contained comments, as you've heard today, a variety of comments, all of varying degrees. We understand what the public is like, but their core fear is, and common sense, is that they've seen antisocial behaviour already in the area. They've seen it in the park, Cottridge Park, which we value greatly in the area, Cottridge Park, and that we did have good cause a few years ago to impose, and it was evidence-based, to impose that alcohol restricted area in Cottridge Park, which is still there. This is just going to contribute to reducing the effect of that alcohol area. Thank you, Chairman. I think that kind of sums it up. Thank you, councillors.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you for that. Mr. Wilkes, do you want to say anything further? This is not new information, but it's by way of summing up. Mr. Wilkes?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Mound?
No, I don't need to add anything. I don't need to add
All
anything.
right, thank you for that. Ms. Bickerton? Oh no, sorry, Mr. Bickerton's not here. Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker's left as well. I think Ms. Sharma's not here. Ms. Chivers, would you like to say anything?
I'd just like to say a couple of words, which is, citizens of Birmingham, we are all local residents, and this doesn't kind of add and augment to our health and well-being. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that. And Ms. Chan, do you want to say anything by way of summing up?
Yes, just very quick, just to summarise my points. If you care about, the safety of women, young women like me, to be able to walk around my neighbourhood late at night when I'm coming home from work, or if I want to go for a jog in Cottridge Park, I don't want to be the victim of alcohol-fuelled harassment. So just think about women like me. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I've got Ms. Caroline Hammond. Ms. Hammond next. Are you still with us there? I think she may have left the conversation. Okay, so I'll go on to Ms. Kowalski.
Nothing to add. Everything was said. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. And then Tracy Seeley, Ms. Seeley, you want to add anything? No, I think she's left the conversation. And so I'm on to Councillor Clements. I know Councillor Grindrod had to go to another appointment. Would you like to sum up on your comments, Councillor Clements?
Thanks very much, Councillor David. Yes, Councillor Grindrod works full time, so has had to leave to get on with his work commitments, which I'm sure we will understand. But I'll be speaking on behalf of both of us. I think you've seen from the report, you know, that there were submissions by myself, Councillor Grindrod, Steve McCabe, and we've also heard from Honorary Alderman Nigel Dawkins, former councillor. So you can see that there's this issue has united opposing political forces in the election season. So that gives you a measure of how important it is. But I think absolutely much more powerful are the contributions by our residents. It's reminded me what a privilege it is to represent Bourneville and Cotteridge, because what an amazing set of articulate and well-informed residents who actually care about quality of life in the local neighbourhood. So I think, you know, you need to take very seriously what they've said, and on the matter of evidence, Honorary Alderman Dawkins has referred to the reasons why a public space protection order and an alcohol-free zone was instituted in Cotteridge Park. Those reasons are the same today, and if anything, they're more pressing. And I do feel that while overall Mr. Rajesh's presentation was extremely professional and comprehensive, it was very ill-judged to attack the integrity of the lead petitioner, Mr. Sharma, and all the local residents who signed that petition, because they were doing it out of a genuine sense of wanting to protect the character of their neighbourhood and prevent a proliferation of crime, disorder, public safety risks, and public nuisance, and protect the well-being of children and other vulnerable citizens, and Ms. Chan has talked very eloquently about the risks of women's safety. So I did feel that was very, very inappropriate, and I think that when people take the opportunity to be active citizens and to sign a petition or make a representation to the committee, it's part of our local democracy to take that seriously and be respectful. And we all understand that Mr. Perathipan wants to have a successful business, and I wish him well in that. And I do come back to my question of, if this is such a tiny premises where alcohol sales would be such a tiny part of a tiny premises, why is alcohol so important? We also heard claim or assertion from Mr. Rajesh that these are exceptional measures that the convenience store would be putting in place to safeguard these alcohol sales. And I would remind the committee members that those are only necessary because the applicant is aspiring to sell alcohol for 24 hours a day. Those measures would not be necessary if the sales were restricted to normal business hours. And if you think of the premises that surround this site, Bourneville Working Men's Club, Merivale News, the Attic Brewery, they've all got restricted licensing hours to respect the fact that this is in the heart of a residential neighbourhood on the border of the Bourneville Village Trust area. And if people are seeking the highlights and the nightlife, they can go to the vibrant areas of Sturchley and Cotteridge. And if they're desperate, absolutely desperate to get alcohol in the middle of the night, they can go to the 24-hour spa, which does have this hatch arrangement. And again, I think it was Miss Chan pointed out that a hatch arrangement actually just protects the staff of the premises, not the residents who are living across the road and will be disturbed by people turning up in cars, possibly congregating. And I think my final comment is again coming back to my one of my sort of key issues for me personally, isn't it, is the traffic and the nuisance that will be caused by volumes of traffic coming to visit this premises, which will be seeking to attract customers when everywhere else is closed in the middle of the night, when the residents in the surrounding area are trying to sleep. So I think you've had very clear picture from the residents who attended that they utterly oppose this application. So I really urge you to reject it. And if you feel that that there are pressing reasons because of the legislation that you have to approve, then please reduce the opening hours, because this is totally inappropriate in a quiet residential setting on a busy road junction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clements, for those comments. And now, importantly, we go back to the applicant, Representative Mr. Rajesh. You have the final word, an opportunity to answer some of the points raised.
Thank you, Chair. I got a few answers, few comments to make. First of all, I would like to say, I mentioned that in my initial statement, we are not discounting all the representations being made, and I mentioned that in my statement. We do respect and we can totally understand the concerns. There were some incidents, it's all taken out of proportion. There are some incidents led us to believe that there was some competition reasons part of the objections were made, because even before we launched the application, we were in communication with our competitors. It's never been raised to us by anybody, and all of a sudden, after the end of the representation, we just loaded with all of the signatures. So it's never been brought to our attention by our competitors in the past, and we were in a very close communication with them, and after the representation ended, all the tone has changed. So there was some other instance. I don't want to mention everything here. It's a hearsay anyway. So which led us to believe there is the element of the representation. I repeat, we are not writing off all of them. We do respect there are serious concerns about about this application from the residents. We are respecting that. In terms of antisocial behavior, it's a very, very generic term. There are so many factors. It's just the mental health issues, drug issues. It's putting everything on a license holder. It's not fair. So if there is any, it's another point I need to say. It's not a new point anyway. I mentioned that already. The police were in communication. You can see in the committee report there are some emails back and forth with police. They were in constant communication before and after. Before and during the consultation period. We talked to them first before we launched the application to get some information about the area. If you put the postcode on any crime website, you'll never find an area with 0 crime on it. It doesn't mean this will associate it with every single license venues. There are so many reasons, so many grounds for these issues. We didn't have any evidence provided by the police or residents. That's the fact. Nobody can object that. Yes, it's an assumptions. The claims made are purely based on the assumptions. The hatch. The reason we use the hatch, there might be, it can be interpreted in so many different ways. That the reason we use the hatch, and my client used the hatch in this previous business, is to judge the people. Is before we sell the alcohol, is just to judge the people. And one thing he learned from his past, and he clearly understood, when you run a business in a small residence area, if you don't win the hearts and minds of the people, he's finished. So he's not going to gain few extra pounds by selling the couple of cans of beers to problem makers. It's not going to help him, or he's not going to succeed. So he has to work with people in order to survive, in order to run his business. So he's never going to jeopardize that. So the hatch we install is to take the full control of every single alcohol sale and all other sales. So it's just to control it. It's not to protect the staff. It can be interpreted in so many different ways, but our main purpose is to control the sales, and we can decide whom we sell and what we sell. In terms of the size of the venue, yes, we only serve small amount of alcohol. It's not that just the alcohol is small amount. Everything we sell is small amount. We don't sell cheap alcohol there. we are not afford to sell cheap alcohols. We have a small.
Sorry, Mr. Rajesh, can I come in there? Unfortunately, I just lost connection for about a minute.
Okay.
You were saying that your client wouldn't risk bad relationships with the community, and then I lost you. Could you just pick it up from there?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes,
obviously
yes.
need to hear everything you say.
What I was trying to say is he's not going to antagonize the residents, because if the residents are not happy, and this is purely, the business is purely based on the local residents, we are not expecting anybody from far away from this area. So if he's going to upset the residents, then he's finished. So his interest is the residents, and that's why he's not going to jeopardize by selling alcohols to problem makers or selling alcohol irresponsibly. He's not going to do that. So that's the reason. And I don't know whether you were around, Chair, when I was talking about the hatch. The hatch we use is
yes,
good.
I heard that. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. The one last things about the site notice. There was a site notice on the lamppost, but there was an additional notice while one of them on the premises, and we had to replace the site notice 8 or 9 times because it was keep ripped off from the venue. Again, I'm just to sum it up. My client invested lots of money, and this is livelihood, and is not going to jeopardize by undermining the licensing objectives. And we have numerous measures in place to promote the licensing objectives. These measures are in the form of license conditions, and therefore it will make a lot easier to review the license by the responsible authorities or even the residents in the future if anything goes wrong. And we have the confidence that premises will be run by promoting the licensing objectives. So while we have all these powers under the Licensing Act 2003, it's totally unfair to refuse this. And this premises is not in a special policy area, and there was no evidence provided by the police or the residents to say this proposal will undermine the licensing objectives. And police are happy with that, and they were in communication throughout the process. So rejecting this application based on the assumptions, it's not fair, and therefore this should be granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that very clear presentation, Mr. Rajesh. So that is the end of the presentations, and thank you to everybody who's participated today, for taking the time to make your view known. I'll now ask all parties to leave the MS Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. Parties will be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. Thank you very much. That's the end of the public session. I will have a 10